Welcome. My name's Casey Barella. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through how to build a mobile inventory scanning application for your company's physical yearly inventory. This application will be built in ServiceNow's new Mobile Studio and Flow Designer to build the full application without any lines of code necessary. I will be building this in a personal developer instance, and to have offline support we need to activate a plugin. This plugin is the SG Offline Support plugin that you will see here in a second. This plugin was developed by SkyGiraffe, the people that made the new mobile studio in Madrid when ServiceNow bought them. It'll take a few seconds to fulfill the request. Once that is done, you will see that it'll be activated, and you will basically need to log into your instance to see that happen. Now that we're back in ServiceNow, we're going to open up Studio, click on Create Application, and then make one from scratch. This application we're going to go ahead and name, calling it Mobile Audit Scanner, and I'm cleaning up the scope name. Hit OK, and then have it redirect you switch back to the application. Now that we're in the Studio IDE, we're going to go ahead and make a table. Clicking on Create Application File, a table. This table we're going to go ahead and call ScanLog, and we're going to uncheck the Create module. We're going to go into Controls, do an auto number, and call the prefix log. We will make it create ACLs, however the user role we're going to go ahead and tie to the ITIL role. Now under Application Access, we do need to make sure we check Create, Update, and Can Delete so that this application can actually interface with Flow Designer and also the new Mobile Studio mobile applications for your phones. Once submitted, we're going to go ahead and start making some columns. The first few of them are going to be reference fields. First one to the user table. Next one's going to be to the asset table, which is actually going to be directly to the hardware asset table, ALM hardware. Next one's going to be to the location table. The location table is required if you're planning on using the maps form on side of the mobile application, which we will show later. Next few fields are going to be true-false fields. The first one's going to be so that we know if it was submitted properly by the end user. And the next one is going to be the verified one. This application will allow end users to self-submit an audit of their asset, and their manager will be able to review that audit. Next few are going to be string fields. The geolocation tag is going to be the GPS coordinates, and we're going to make that one a string length of 255 characters. The next one's going to be comments. We want that to be a larger block, so we're going to be allowing that to have 4,000 characters. And the last one's going to be the barcode, which will be fine for under 40 characters. This is so we have a reference and audit back to how the asset was scanned in the application. Now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and add the audit column so we can say that a few of these fields should be audited. As they change, they will go to the activity stream, and you will be able to see what the values were before and afterwards. We're going to say the barcode, comments, and geolocation field should be audited. Just in case they are projected, we could see what they were in the bad state before they were actually fixed to their proper state. Once done, we just save the form and we'll move on. Now that we've had that done, we're going to go ahead and open up the form, clicking Show Form, right-clicking on the header, and configuring the form design. Just so we have a fairly pretty form, we're going to move the smaller fields up top and the string fields to the bottom, putting the submitted and verified next to each other. And in the next few screenshots, you'll probably see that I've actually switched user and number here, but you get the gist of how I wanted the layout to look. And we'll be able to reload the form here, and you'll see them in a cleaner fashion here. The next thing to do is go ahead and build a related list for the hardware asset table. We're going to do this through Studio by going to Related Lists, finding the hardware asset table, and you'll notice that it'll prompt us that we have to create this in a view. We cannot make a related list in the global scope since we're in a scoped application. But all we need to do is click on Create a View, go in, make a mobile audit view, then go ahead and move over scan logs, hit save, and that's as easy as it is to make a related list. Now we'll go ahead and build some navigation, the menus and modules. So we're going to go ahead and make a menu called Mobile Audits. Go ahead and set it to the ITIL role. And underneath that, we're going to go ahead and make two navigation modules. First one's fairly easy. It's going to go to the scan logs table. And you'll notice we have the order of 100. The next one we're going to go ahead and build is going to be for the hardware asset table. And the reason we want to show this one is so that we can actually pull up that view properly. That view, since it's a scope view, will not natively be able to switch between them in the standard global interface of hardware assets. So when we switch it over here, you'll notice that we type in the view name, and it is the underscored view name, so mobile underscore audit. We're going to go ahead and change the order of that one to 200. You'll notice back in the main system, we're going to go ahead and find the mobile audit, star those so we get quick access through favorites later, but you notice there's a scan log, the table is empty. However, the hardware asset table, as you'll notice, says the mobile audit view, and when we go into it, it's still the mobile audit view, and that related list is there for you to see. Now that we have the table built, we're going to go ahead and create the mobile application. We're going to go ahead and give it a title, inventory audit, throw a icon on it, and give it a color. Make it stand out a little bit. Inside of this, we're going to make a few folders for this application. First one called self-audit. Next one's going to be for verifications, compliance verification, and the last one is going to be for maps. Now that we have some folders made, we're going to go ahead and make some applets. First applet name is going to be My Assets Due, and it's going to be a list. Like before, we're going to go ahead and select some colors and some icons. You'll notice that we need to add a data item. In this data item, we're going to give it the same name and set it to the table of scan logs. We're going to set the condition. This condition is going to be saying the user is dynamic and it's for the user in question, so it is me. Then we're going to go ahead and say submitted is false, because we want to see only the stuff that the customer or the end user has not submitted yet. Just so they don't see their verified things as well, we're going to go ahead and say verified is false as well. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now we're going to go ahead and select that data item and save that. Each applet, after you configure what it's going to pull, you need to configure the screens. So we're going to go ahead and start setting a few of these. You'll notice that we're setting number, user, asset, and you'll notice below it shows where they're actually located on the card for that screen. When you click on the Details tab, which is another page on there, you can replicate from the primary screen to save yourself some time. So we're going to go ahead and click on Save and move on to our next applet here in a second. We're going to go ahead and follow a lot of the same steps for the second applet. Second applet is going to be My Verifications Due for the manager, so that it can verify when a user self-submits their application. So we're going to go ahead and select another picture, icon, color. Still going to be a list. However, the fields on this screen after the data item are going to be a bit more in depth, so they can verify what the user has submitted. So we're going to go ahead and make the data item like we did last time. We're going to go ahead and edit some spelling on that, adding the apostrophe. Still setting it to the scan log table. However, the query condition this time is going to say that submitted is true, and that the actual record in question is not, dynamic me. It's going to be user. So, I'm the manager of this user. So I'm going to go down to user. I'm going to dot walk over to manager. And in that case, I'm going to say is dynamic to me, so it shows up for me. Now we can go ahead and set that data item, and we'll start filling out the screen. go ahead and start filling out the fields for the screens like we did before. We're going to do barcode, then user, and asset, geolocations, and comments. And you'll notice a few more on this screen just because, we're going to be verifying what barcode was scanned, what comments were entered, and so forth, so we can make sure that the end user, our employee, has done it. You'll notice also we turned on the activity stream so that the activity stream can be shown if you click into the record. Now we're going to go ahead and jump back, make another applet for maps. Click on maps, call it submitted asset map. And the map fields, when you map them, really need a location set for them. So that's why we wanted to make sure we are populating location table in this data. So we're making the new data item. In that data item, still going to go to the scan log table. However, this one, we just want to see the submitted assets, and then the other map is going to be the verified assets. So we're basically saying submitted is true, and verified is false. Now that that can be tied to that map, we're going to go ahead and start putting some fields. Important on this one is the location, and we will show you some other things like under the user, if we dot walk first, we can actually pull out things like business telephone and location, so we could show them on the map properly. So you want to make sure you dot walk to something before you move the actual user over, because that dot walked field would no longer be able to be pulled over anymore. So we'll set these in order, and you'll notice that when I show the mapping of where things need to go, business phone needs to be in E5, and under E6 we're going to need to go ahead and put location. And that's because at the bottom under the view there's two buttons on the mobile app screen, and if they're in the right locations, they'll actually work. You'll be able to call the end user or open up the actual Google Maps or Apple Maps and so forth on your phone. And that's as easy it is to make sure you have that linkage there for you. We want to go ahead and turn on the activity stream for this one as well. And once again, that's what it looks like at the bottom in the order. You're going to go ahead and make another applet now. We're going to do the same map. We're going to throw in a different color and a different icon, just so you have a little bit more of a palette for your application to make sure you know what needs to be done. And we're going to turn the activity stream on first this time as we're making it. Same thing, we're going to go ahead and make the data item. And we're just going to make this one opposite as the last one. So the condition is going to be verified as true and submitted as true. We're going to do that first dot walking over for the user again to get the business phone. Remember, you need to do that dot walking first and move it over to its correct location before you move over the field like user, because then you wouldn't be able to dot walk over to it. Hopefully they'll be able to fix this in a future build, because you should be able to map multiple fields, or actually get to the dot walked fields properly in the future. Like shown before, we wanted to make sure number, asset, and the comments and barcode and so forth show up on this form. And location will allow us to click into the map as well. I'm going to click the replicate from primary like we've done before. Go ahead and save that form. Now we're going to go ahead, head back to the applet screen and edit the applets so that we have offline support. So we're just going to go ahead and click on the available offline tab on pretty much everything we do in this, and that'll play with that plugin, and we'll show that in the video demo at the end, that you can have offline supports fully in your apps as long as you just toggle everything to have that support. And that's as simple as it is to turn on offline support. The full app needs offline support too, and that was already checked. Now we're going to go ahead and make the action items and functions. These are the heart of the new mobile application, allowing you to do work on your data. So we're going to go ahead and click on new. We're going to go ahead and call this one submit audit item. Just the item to keep it separate because it is an action item, and the action items play with the function actions, but they can kind of get a little confusing. So we're going to go ahead and select the table, hit submit, and make sure that the use current record as condition was checked. Now we're going to go ahead and open up the actions for a function. Click on new there. Once there, we're going to go ahead and name that. We're going to name this one as a submit audit function, just to make sure it's a little bit clear. We're going to go ahead and select the table, and then we're going to tie it back to that item. We could put in a success message or failure message. In this demo, we're just going to not do that, but we do want to make sure we click that offline checkbox and submit it. Now we need to tie those two things together. So you have the items and the functions, and in the items you need to actually have UI parameters for the functions, and we're going to go ahead and call this one get comments. We're going to say the type is text. It's going to be inline. We're going to go ahead and say it's mandatory. And we're going to go ahead and make another one. Next one is going to be get GPS. We're going to give that an order of 2. Notice that GPS is not there because we're under user input, but when we go to autofill, you'll notice that GPS location is there. So that allows it to actually pull in the GPS geo coordinates straight from the phone. Now we're going to go ahead and do the one for the barcode. Barcode is going to be a user input, but they have the QR barcode right there. I'm going to make that one mandatory because we want to make sure everybody submitting a self-service audit actually scans it so that the supervisor or manager auditing these things can make sure that matches up with what's currently on the record. It's just one of those extra levels of security. So we're going to go ahead and reload the form, and you'll notice that we now have, under that function, 3 UI parameters. Now when we go back to the item, we are going to set up some writebacks. You'll notice, though, when I go ahead and say I want to set some fields with this item and function comments, there are no elements to choose from, and I need to have some writebacks to be able to do that. So the first writeback, we're going to go ahead and say they're all going to be string. They need to actually be done before we make the mappings, which I'll show here. So the mapping, I don't have one side, which is the item parameter, but the UI parameter I do have. So we're going to go back to that function and make those writebacks. And the first writeback, go ahead and do get comments. We're going to put a 2 after it just to make sure it's separate from the other one, because that's the hardest thing to learn on this is the items versus the functions and how they play together. So we're going to do some insert and stays here, so I'm going to go ahead and say, get GPS2, insert and stay. And then we're going to do the barcode one as well. So now we have the ability to do item parameters like barcode and UI parameters, and this is the mapping between them to make sure it passes the data back and forth. So we're going to do this 2 more times for the comments and the GPS, so we have it fully working before we actually set this function as a swipe condition. Right. Now you'll notice if we go ahead and reload this form, down at the bottom we have those writebacks with everything linked back and forth. And now when we go ahead and say set the value of comments, we can actually use the pill picker to set that to the comments we got from the other screen. Barcode, same thing. We're going to select the barcode and then the geo coordinates. And you'll notice we're actually setting one more field, and that field is that checkbox, the submitted is true. So when this function gets actually run, it'll mark that as true. Now we're going to go back to the applet screen, open My Assets Do, and we're going to actually set that function as one of the swipe actions that we can do. So if you click on the Functions tab, you have the ability to do top menu functions and then swipe functions, and that's the one we want to do. So we're going to click on swipe. We're going to go ahead and label it. You can set what direction you want it to happen in, swiping to the left or swiping to the right. And there it is. So once I've done that, hit save. Once it's in the app, you'll actually be able to swipe to the left and do it. You'll notice that if I try to do one to the right, that function has already been used, so it will not let me put another one in. I'd have to create one from scratch. Now we're actually going to do a little bit of cleanup to that function I just made. So we're actually going to go ahead and check the boxes that allow us to upload a picture. And a signature when that gets filled out. also heading back over to the applet, you'll notice that if we look at the details screen, we can actually submit an audit from there as well. Sometimes you're just looking at the list and you want to be able to swipe. However, sometimes you want to click a little bit more in depth, and we're going to go ahead into details, function, and go ahead and add that as a top menu function in the details screen. And you'll notice that that one is available to reuse because it's not used on the same screen. If it was on the swipe screen still, the list screen, we wouldn't be able to reuse that function. However, if it's on a different screen, we can reuse that function. Now we're going to go ahead and build two more functions and items, and those are going to be for rejecting and verification of those audits. So we're going to go ahead and click on New. Go ahead and call this one Reject Audit Item. Same table as before, same use condition as current record. Go ahead and set values. So submitted for rejection is basically going to just empty that true-false field back out. So that means that they're going to be required to do it again. And then we're going to go ahead and say, well, they put in comments, a geolocation, and a barcode before, but I actually don't have to do anything in those. I just have to leave those blank, which means that in the database they will be overridden. But remember, since we did audit those three fields in the table, there will be a history of that shown still. So I'm going to put in a description here. It's best practice as you go through all your code and screens that you go ahead and comment of what's going on. So with this one, we actually don't need to do any item writebacks since we're just modifying a field, basically hard coding it back to false and emptying some fields out. So all we need to do is make that function, and none of the stuff we needed to do with the submitting, like all the writebacks and those linkages, will need to be done. So we'll just go ahead and call this one Reject Audit Function. We're going to select the item, and we're going to make sure that it's available offline as well. And that's as easy as it is to go ahead and build that. Going to do it once more, but instead of reject, we're going to go ahead and verify this time. And the only difference here is we'd say verification, verified, is true. We leave the old comments and everything else. If you wanted to hard code a new comment saying you verified it or whatever, you could definitely do that. You could also get more input for the rejection or the verified, but for this demo, that's all we needed to do. So we'll make one more function. Make sure to tie it back like we did before. Make sure that we set everything as possible and select offline as well. Now we're going to go ahead and jump back over to the screens, the applets as they're called, and we're going to go back to verification, and we're going to go ahead and do swipes just like we did with the submitting. And swipes just make things a little bit easier when you're submitting multiple things or verifying multiple screens. So we're just going to go ahead to the functions, and we're going to go ahead in that function and do swipes. Now that we've added that one, we just need to add in the reject one, and you could do left or right. However, I've noticed that when you do it on the same one, you're showing the manager or supervisor both of those at the same time instead of thinking, can I only reject or can I only verify and submit? So if you do them in the same direction, that you get a little bit more. These ones are now in opposite directions. However, you can go ahead and do it in any regard as you want. So now that that's built, we're going to go ahead and move over to the main interface in ServiceNow and open up Flow Designer. Since Flow Designer opens up in new tabs, I like to do it back in the main interface. However, you can do it within Studio now. We're going to go ahead and select New Flow. It's already in our application, and we're just going to go ahead and call this one Populate Audit Logs, and then we're going to say Yearly. So this is what's actually going to build out our log table once a year and make sure that they're ready so the user can actually submit them. We're going to go ahead and say the trigger. Since there is no yearly in the list, you basically just do a repeat and set it to 365 days. But you can do this quarterly, monthly, yearly, whatever works for your organization. Then we're going to go ahead and say actions. We're going to go ahead and say look up records. We're now going to point it to the hardware asset table. And then conditions. The conditions we want are, state is active or in use. So we go ahead and do that, and we say that we want to make sure this only goes out to people that have assets assigned to them. So we're going to say assigned to is not empty. And then we're going to go ahead and change the max quantity. In this demo, there was less than 1,000. But let's say you're in an organization that has 3,000 to 4,000 computers. 5,000 is a good number to, make sure you don't miss any records. So once done with that, we're going to go ahead and save. And then we're going to add some flow logic to it. Subflows are great, but under flow logic, we just go ahead and do a for each. And we're going to go ahead and say, for each hardware records, drag and drop that over. Then go ahead and plus that little plus and do an action for the each. And then we're going to go ahead and say create a record. Then we're going to go ahead and say to the scan log table. And then we're going to set some fields. These fields are what get populated from the hardware asset table. So we're going to say asset is, and we're going to drag over that hardware asset record. Then we're going to go ahead and say user is, and then that's going to be the assigned to. And then location is, and this is the location that assigned to user normally be at, so that you have that historical records where you can check the GPS coordinates against that user's location where they normally are. So you see I walked over to the assigned to and then location, and then go ahead and just hit done. That's as easy it is to make that flow. So now that that flow is made, we're going to jump back over to the main system. In the main system, we're going to go over that audit logs table, and you'll notice it is empty right now. So when we jump back to the flow designer, we're going to go ahead and test it. In there, we're going to go ahead and run test. It's going to take a few seconds because it's actually going through and scanning all those records and then creating all the new records right now. Once that is done, we go ahead and see that it's been executed, jump over and see that it did it 764 times. So it actually made 764 records. Then if we jump back over to the main system, we'll click on audits, and then you'll notice, oh, there they all are, ready and waiting for those users to submit an audit. We'll go ahead and click into one, and you'll notice that it's ready for the barcode, geolocation, and comments. Now we'll be able to actually look at that scan log a little bit more in depth by clicking over to the asset record, and also seeing in that asset record that related list is now populated. You'll notice when I went over there, oops, nope, that view is not there anymore, and that view is not available. But if I click on it and actually find that record, which is right there at the top, and go into it, it shows that related record with that scan log. And now that the flow designer has run successfully in the test, all we need to do is activate it. Once it's activated, it'll run yearly, or if you want to switch it up to be monthly or quarterly, you guys can do that. Once that's done, the application's pretty much completely done. I've uploaded it to GitHub so you guys can download it. However, I'm going to jump back into Studio and show you a few other small things. First thing we're going to show you is jumping into the applications themselves. We can see and do different things like setting UI policies and UI styles. However, the things that we're going to dive into are smart buttons and navigations. Smart buttons allow you to actually take some of the fields and go straight to an address, an email, a phone, or URL. And then navigation buttons let you jump around in the actual screens themselves. So you'd actually select what application and applet and have it jump back and forth between things. But now that it's completely done, we wanted to show you the app. And so here's the app. You'll notice that when I dived into it, you actually have all these different applications, and you'll notice I'm logged in as Joe Employee, and I can actually go offline. Going offline will download the data and save it on the device so that you can modify the data and re-upload it after it's done. So if I go into Mobile Audit, you'll notice the other apps aren't available offline. You'll see My Assets Due, Audit Verification. I'll go to My Assets Due. Here is that one with that button at the top. I can go back, I can do the swipe, and I'm doing the swipe this time. And I'm going to go ahead and put in a comment because you notice it is required like we made it in the system. We're going to scan the asset tag. We're going to go ahead and upload an image. I'm actually going to go ahead and take a picture of my laptop. And I'm going to go ahead and do a signature. And that signature will be saved in the system as well. And I went and go ahead and hit submit. You'll notice that there's a little cloud icon saying that it's offline. And if I go back, there's nothing in the audit verification to be due. So I'm going to go ahead back into the offline mode and sync it back. So it's going to go ahead and sync back. And for this demo, we're actually going to have an audit verification waiting because I'm going to say that I am my own manager. So I went into here. I opened up Joe Employee. I'm looking at the map, that it is a submitted map, and you'll notice I can actually verify this one now. The nice thing about this is we jumped all the way into the activity stream, and you'll notice that there's that picture, there's the barcode and the comments, and I can actually reject or verify the asset right there. So I went ahead and verified it, and now it's under the verified assets. Now that I'm actually looking at my verified asset where it is, the activity stream is there as well, and you'll notice all that's still in there. I can even add more to it if I wanted to. And then the big one is once I go ahead and click on that little card, you'll notice that I have the ability to call a phone number, or I have the ability to open it up in Google Maps or Waze or Apple Maps and so forth. So thank you very much, guys. This has been a great pleasure showing you guys how to build this app. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at my New Access email address, or hopefully I got to see most of you at K19 for ServiceNow in Vegas in early May. So I'm going to post this a few days early, so hopefully some of you guys will be able to use this and make your inventory asset yearly scans and audits much more of a breeze. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.